Welcome to Scared Out of Our Collective Heads. I'm Patrick.
I'm Kevin.
And we're here this week to talk about one of my favorite quasi-recent horror movies.
Yeah, it's 2008, less than a decade ago.
Great vampire movie that's not as much about vampires.
Yeah. It's called Let the Right One In. There's a remake. Don't watch that one.
Do not.
Also, don't watch the dubbed version because the sound syncing is off.
Yeah.
That's not okay. Because like you'll see a character walking after you hear the no. Just subtitles. And if at all possible, stop watching now, come back after you've watched it.
Yes.
Because this is probably very near the top of my recommendations list for horror movies.
So this is spoilers. I'm not doing this a lot on this series, on Scared Out of Our Collective Heads, but I want to make sure we put a little spoilers tag in here so we can talk about some of the aspects of this movie.
Right. So we're going to start with a little spoiler free.
Okay.
It's a very artsy movie.
Yes.
Like there's very limited special effects. It's more about the interplay between the characters. One of the things that they do really well, which is so difficult to do, is the child actors in this carry the film, and they are the main characters, and they do it well.
They really do. Your main character is a child, is a boy, and he basically kind of becomes enamored by a girl who moves into his apartment complex, who is a vampire.
Yeah. And he sees kind of the similarity between their characters, and the interplay between them is very interesting. There's also, there are several scenes, when I was rewatching it, I hadn't really noticed this at first, but there's actually several scenes in the film that have no dialogue whatsoever.
Yes.
They're just there to establish the characters and to show them in not an action-oriented moment, but something that just allows you to connect with the characters. And I thought that was a really special thing that not a lot of movies do. But it lets you connect to the characters. The film's about 2 hours long, and absolutely worth your time.
It really is. Now, go into spoilers a little bit on here, because I do want to talk about some of the things that make this movie unique, and some of the things that one of the things in particular American film just completely got wrong.
Yeah, I haven't seen the American one.
So one of the things is it's too fast paced. It doesn't let you breathe. The original, like you mentioned, there's scenes where there's no dialogue.
There's a toothbrushing scene.
Yes.
Where it's like the kid and his mom, and they're just brushing their teeth, and then they start to brush their teeth at each other, and it's just a moment that kind of establishes because of his loneliness, and like he has conflicts with his mom, but it helps to show that they do love each other and that they're comfortable with each other, but there are some issues between them.
Yeah. Ellie's the girl vampire who has a kind of her adult that like takes her around, who's basically in love with her to an extent, and kind of doing everything. That's kind of the vibe that I got out of it.
I feel like that there's maybe an untold story there where he feels like he owes her. Definitely. Because like there's a part right after the part where he gets caught before and he leaves the jug there. Yeah. When he goes back, he says, she says, "I need food" or something, and he's like, "Well, I mean, what else am I here for?" And it to me showed a little bit of despondent attitude where he was just like, I want to help more. Yeah. And he didn't feel like he could anymore. Yeah,
I agree. Another thing that I think is interesting about it is the character, and I discussed this with you a little bit when we were talking about reviewing this movie. It's very subtle in the movie, and they talk about it more in the book, because this is based on a book.
Right, which I plan to read.
But Ellie was not born a woman.
Right.
And was castrated as a young boy before becoming a vampire, and has assumed that gender role And to me, I think this is interesting. It's very subtle in the movie, but it's interesting because, one, even in 2008, that's a very groundbreaking topic to talk about, even the subtlety of that. But you have this person who was born a boy, but obviously that's not who she is.
Yeah.
And her character, even though she would be 150 years old by this point, she's still. I think there's an interesting maturity aspect to it, but at the same time, she's learned who she is, and you also have the aspect of, did she make that choice based on that, or was it before?
Yeah. Their willingness to leave things ambiguous is something that I suspect is left out of the American release.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things that we're simply not told, and we're
because that's completely out of the American release. They don't even talk about it.
Yeah, and so like we were talking about, the toothbrushing scene, and like there are scenes in this that they just allow the characters to be themselves in a situation that's not really related to the main story.
Yeah.
She talks about how a lot of the conflicts are really interesting because there's very limited dialogue. The scene where she tells him, I'm not really a girl.
Not really a girl, yeah.
And he says, but do you want to go steady?
Yeah.
And that's just a really cute moment.
He doesn't care.
Yeah.
And it's
just like, I like you.
I like you, yeah. And that's the other part. You have the dual meaning of that. And I think that one of the things that I thought was endearing about this movie as well, and partially is because they're children, at least the actors are, is it's basically a love story that has no sex.
Yeah.
And they just love each other. They love being with each other. Just being together.
Well, that's something that they establish in like the first couple scenes of the movie is they recognize the loneliness in each other, and that shared experience, the shared isolation.
Yeah.
And knowing that the other person understands is understanding is what love is in a lot of ways.
That's exactly.
And yeah, so if you've watched this movie, you know what we're talking about. If you haven't, I'm sorry that you listened this long, but go watch it again. At the time of this recording, it's available on Amazon Prime for free.
Yes.
So go watch it again.
Yeah. So if you're a Prime member, you can watch it, and if you're not a Prime member, be a Prime member because it's awesome.
Yeah. And then subscribe to us on Twitch.
Yeah. See you guys later.